All right, everybody, welcome back to Matt Money. Welcome back to the channel. I'm sitting here with a director from Newfound Gold Corp, Dr. Quinton Hennigh, if I'm saying that correctly. How are you doing, sir?
Good.
And give
Very good.
yourself a
How are
quick
you, Matt?
introduction. Very good, very good. So
All
tell us a
right.
little bit about yourself and your current role as director of Newfield Gold Corp.
Yeah, look, I am,
Newfound, sorry.
yeah, no worries, no worries. I'm an exploration geologist. I've been in the industry since I was about 16 years old. I actually started working
Oh,
underground in
wow.
a mine here in Colorado. Um, I've been in the exploration side of the business since graduate school, so roughly 30 years now. I've worked for major mining companies, including Homestake, and then Newcrest, and then Newmont. So in that succession, and then about 13 years ago, I decided to get into the junior mining industry, which is really the now leading the charge in terms of exploration. This is where the exploration happens, is in the junior mining sector. So there's a number of junior mining companies, mostly listed in Canada, of course.
Mhm.
But we focus on exploring for the next generation of deposits for the mining industry.
That's really cool. So, can you give us a little bit of an overview as to what you mean by, I guess, exploring gold and understanding how you can kind of find these big prospects that end up turning these junior mining companies into major mining companies?
Yeah, look, it's not a necessarily a recipe one can follow. I mean, every single discovery is different. But in general, gold is kind of a unique element. If you look at all that metals on the periodic table, for example, gold is found in a large variety of different types of rocks. So sedimentary rocks, metamorphic rocks, and igneous rocks. It can be found in all of those. And it can be found in many, many different environments. Okay, so it can be found, in different tectonic environments and different different time periods, even in Earth history. So looking back, there's certain periods in Earth's history which seem to be more prolific in terms of generating gold deposits. So I find it a particularly challenging, but you know, it's kind of what really lights my fire in terms of getting me out of bed every morning is looking for a large variety of different unique gold systems.
Yeah, it reminds me a lot of what because you never really know what's down there, right? So you can't always really when you're kind of exploring for these things because relating it to the oil and gas sector, which is kind of what I'm in. Uh, you explore and you're always very, I guess, excited about what you might potentially find. But at the end of the day, sometimes it comes up really good. And then obviously everyone's excited and everyone can kind of see what the future potential of that particular drill hole or that area might bring. And then sometimes you also get disappointed. So it seems like a very roller coaster like past 13 years for yourself, but also very rewarding because you can bring things to literally just, I guess, bare ground, not necessarily knowing what's underneath, to finding something with a lot of potential and obviously bringing that to market. So that seems
That's
very
correct.
interesting.
Yes, yes, you can. It's really where a lot of wealth can be created. And as you say, statistically, your odds of finding, say, a multi-million ounce gold system are fairly slim. Out of every, say, 100 prospects around the planet, maybe if we're lucky, one of those might turn into a million plus ounce gold deposit. Okay, so they're not easy to find. They're few and far between. But when you get into a big one, you can usually tell it because every time you go out and do some more work on it, the picture improves, and that's the general rule I use for determining whether a project is a good one or not. Is that as you progressively do work, and the feedback you get from that work continues to tell a very good story or continues to tell an improving story, then you're onto something good.
And when you say work, do you mean drilling more boreholes and being able to see what the potential, I guess, gram per ton looks like as you continue to drill more holes throughout the area?
That's certainly one aspect of it, but early on you have to do some basic work, both geophysical work
Mm.
and geochemical work and geologic work as well. Okay, so you have to go out and collect certain data sets, geophysical data, there's a lot of different things you can do. You can study the magnetism of rocks. You can study the density of the rocks in the subsurface. You can study the electrical properties of the rocks in the subsurface. But you collect all those data sets, and usually when you collect those, you can start to see a picture. Okay.
Mm-hmm.
Then you collect your geochemical data set. You know, it might be rock chip samples if there's rock sticking out of the ground, or it might be soil sampling or stream sediment sampling if you don't have rock available to sample. Again, but you look for that pattern. You look for improving data as you go along that says, hey, we're onto something. You know, it's kind of it's like playing Where's Waldo. When you start to see the red stripes, you know you're getting close to a Waldo, right? But I mean, drilling is usually the more advanced level of exploration. That's where we're at Newfound right now. We are actually drilling our targets, but you know, even at that level, if those drill holes that you're drilling, progressively drilling, keep delivering and keep telling you you're on an improving trajectory, then you know you're into a good system.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, it's actually pretty interesting. It seems very similar to what exploration geologists do in the oil and gas industry as well, which makes sense. I mean, they're both natural resources, so that's really interesting. I mean, I kind of had an idea, so that's what it probably looked like, but actually talking through it with a geologist is very helpful to kind of understand that I'm not a crazy person. So tell us a little bit about the major successes that you've seen in some of these junior mining companies and how it might relate to the Queensway project that you're working on with Newfield.
Yeah. Sure, absolutely.
Or Newfound, sorry.
Yeah, no worries. Like the record of discovery, or the track record of discovery over the past, say, 20 years in the gold space has not actually generated a huge number of large high-grade discoveries. There's just been a handful. And, you know, I would say that when you find a high-grade discovery such as Newfound, these things are true company makers. I mean, they're truly the kind of deposit that you can use as a flagship operation for a mining company. So they're not easy to find. These are tough ones. But I've been very fortunate to be part of a number of discoveries. Like, you know, going back shortly after I left Newmont, I helped Gold Canyon, for example, in Ontario, and we drilled up a 5 million ounce deposit.
Oh, wow. Yeah.
You know, it was in northwestern Ontario. You know, so that's an example. But you know, look forward about 2016. I started helping Eric Sprott looking around at assets that he could combine with Kirkland Lake to build, you know, an up and coming mid-tier gold producer, you know, kind of a world-class gold producer. And one of the assets that I had a chance to look at was the Fosterville mine, which is in Victoria State in Australia. And look, it's a mine that had been operating for, I believe, over 20 years at that point. Had produced a little over 1 million ounces.
Oh, wow.
But they had, you know, as they were doing progressive drilling down into the depths for more ore, simply looking for extensions of known ore bodies, they started to hit some very high grade mineralization. And that's what caught Eric's attention. He asked for me to go over and have a look at it. And I got to look at some of the first drill holes that came out of that high grade zone, which that zone was called the Eagle Zone. It's now progressed down dip, and it's I believe the term they use for the present zone is the Swan Zone. But it's simply different structures that follow the down plunge extent. Look, the first core holes that I saw from that property said that was going to be a very big system, and because of that, I told Eric. He then bought up a large shareholding in Newmarket, which was the company that owned Fosterville, and then a few months later, he pushed Kirkland towards Newmarket to take them over. Ultimately, Kirkland took over Newmarket, that's taking in Fosterville. And when they did, they continued to explore, and they continued to find extremely high grade. And the company, you know, on the back of the merger, I think their market cap was something like $1 billion Canadian, something like this. By the time they had drilled out a significant resource in the Swan Zone, the company's value had gone up to 10 billion, so it was a tenfold increase. So again, these wonderful high grade discoveries are literally company makers. Okay, and that's the case in Newfound. Is that I think Fosterville is the best example for what we're seeing at the Queensway project. Is that we're seeing the beginnings of discovery of a new, very high grade gold system that could underpin a huge market valuation.
No, I mean that makes perfect sense. I mean, you're sitting with some capital and some potential, right? But once you actually start delineating and actually figuring out what you have there, I mean, then you actually have the tangible assets sitting underneath your feet, and you kind of understand what potential it actually has. That's relatively interesting. So, tell us a little bit more about, I guess, what Newfound really has. Is it just really capital at the moment? So they don't. Everyone kind of knows, or looking through the presentation rather. It looks like there's no actual producing assets as of yet, but it's mostly just this Queensway project where they've had some discoveries since the 80s. And now you're kind of saying there's the potential delineation here for Queensway South, where it really could ramp up to be a huge company maker.
Yeah, let me describe the property first of all. Look, this is an exploration level property. There is no mine. Okay, this is an exploration play. We're out there at this point drilling and doing some other exploration work to see if we can find or prove up significant resources here. Okay, the property is about 110 kilometers long from north to south.
Wow.
If you go, it's kind of subdivided into two blocks. The North Queensway, there's a lake that transects the property about a third of the way down. So the north of that lake, it's called North Queensway. South of that lake, it's called South Queensway. The thing about the North Queensway area is that it's readily accessible off the highway that comes out of Gander to the west. So, you know, it's literally very easy to drive in and then, you know, even drive your drill to site and conduct exploration work. The area to the south of the lake is a bit more remote. It takes a little bit more, you know, creativity to access that region. But what we have going right now, I would say discovery level drilling up at North Queensway. And then on South Queensway, they've got a lot of earlier stage work like trenching, rock sampling, till sampling. So the area's been glaciated. So they actually sample glacial till for gold particles and stuff to assess the, you know, underlying potential. But the real meat of the story is the discovery at the Keats Zone, which is in the North Queensway area. The Keats Zone was discovered. Look, there was historic drilling, like you said. There was drilling going back to the 1980s in this area. The work that was done, it's quite interesting that some of the holes actually hit some high grade, narrow but high grade intervals that said, hey, there's something going on here. Yeah. Nonetheless, the companies that had come in to explore the area, they, for whatever reason, you know, probably low gold prices is my most likely bet, did not pursue the initial high grade intercepts they had. Okay, so fast forward to 2019, late 2019. In November, Newfound, which was private at the time, targeted an area below where these previous operators had drilled some holes and hit high grade. And the first hole they drilled was phenomenal. It hit 19 meters of 93 grams per ton gold. I mean, basically that's 19 meters of 3 ounces per ton gold. In mining, that's, you know, when I say off the chart, that's way off the chart. Okay, that's probably the single best drill hole drilled in North America in this year, certainly. Now, subsequent to that, look, these guys have gone public. They went public in early August. We started trading, I think it was around August 10th or 11th, somewhere in there. And they also raised money on the back of that listing. Okay, so they have lots of cash, and they have announced a 100,000 meter drill program to follow up on that discovery. Now, if you look at the work that's been done in the past, say, 3 months, I believe it is, since we've been exploring there, they've only drilled about 10% of the planned holes to date. Okay, so there's lots of drilling to come. This is going to be a long-term project over the next couple of years. But the holes have delivered fantastic results. You know, they've done incremental step-out holes around that high-grade discovery. They're seeing consistent high-grade numbers. They're now doing some more aggressive step outs to the north and south, and again, they're seeing some fantastic numbers. They released some here recently, and they've also tested some new targets, like 2 kilometers north of Keats. They have a target called the Lotto Zone, and they actually drilled a very high grade intercept there. I think that was one of the first intercepts we announced to the market a couple of months ago. All right, so back to my underlying, thesis about how you're on to a good project is that you see continued positive results out of that project, and in this case, slam dunk. I mean, the numbers that have been coming back are phenomenal. I think we personally think that Newfound is on to a multi-million ounce gold system, but more importantly, it's a very high grade system, so it's going to be a very highly desired asset. The other thing is it's shallow. Okay, I told you the story of Fosterville earlier. Like Fosterville, the high grade started rough, like down the plunge of the chute. It was roughly 2 or 3 kilometers down the plunge of the chute. We're not that deep. We're literally right at surface and hitting
surface,
the high grade.
basically.
Okay, so this is a wonderful, wonderful story. My prediction is this will be one of the best discoveries, if not the best discovery in North America in the past, call it 30 years.
Yeah. No, that's really interesting to see. I'm just looking at the exploration program here. So phase 1, look like it's about a $6 million phase of drilling and kind of delineating there, prospecting, gravity modeling, tilling, trenching, as you mentioned. And then phase 2 is about a $16 million program as well. Sounds like it's a really good, it's got a lot of potential. Now I'm just curious. I'm assuming that gold mining and doing some of this exploration prospects, there's always an underlying range of uncertainty, as anything with geology and not being able to see things on the surface. But as you've discovered, say in the Keats Zone and the Lotto Zone, what is the minimum amount at the moment that you guys see that between these two zones that you've kind of gotten a lot more information on has, right? And of course, then there's the broader Queensway South, Queensway North as a whole, what the range has kind of expanded to based off of the work done. But I guess what's the minimum at the moment? I'm just curious if you have any idea what the minimum recovery would be based off of the current information you have.
I'm going to kind of rephrase your question, and hopefully I get this right. What you're basically asking is, how big do we think this system could be? Is that correct?
Well, I'm thinking, how big could it be? Because you said multi-million ounce, right? So that's looking at the entire Queensway and kind of interpolating based off of what you found in the Keats Zone and the Lotto Zone, and kind of I guess interpolating that across the entire Queensway South and based off.
I got you. So when I speak here, I'm going to speak in this is forward-looking statements. I'm a director.
Yeah, of course.
People can read the forward-looking statements, but let me give you a flavor around the exploration target here. Okay, first of all, at the Keats Zone, only a very small area has been drilled to date. Yet all of the holes that we've discussed so far, all of them have hit some very substantial high grade, including long intervals with visible gold. Okay, if I had to define what might be just within a very small box around the Keats Zone, I would say it's reasonable to expect 1 million ounces right there, but by no means is that a limitation on the size of this thing.
Right.
So I'm talking about what's within, say, maybe 150 meters of surface. Okay, we know these systems go down. They also continue along strike. The Lotto Zone is 2 kilometers north of the Keats Zone, and we're seeing similar style mineralization there to what we see at the Keats. Do I think that they're two independent systems that have nothing to do with each other? Heck no. Okay, geologically, they look very, very similar. Okay, so when you start to see 2 kilometers pop up as a potential strike on a system like this, that's where you can easily start to see that magnification, getting into the multi-million ounce range. Okay, then bring in the depth component. Okay, my best guess, my intuitive guess based on the drilling we've done so far at Keats Zone, is that the high grade deposit has a moderately to shallowly plunging north projection. Okay, and what that means is it will go down into the ground, and it could go down for a long ways. Remember what I told you about the Swan Zone
Right.
in Australia? You know, it was a way down plunge before they found it. In the case of Keats, the nice thing is it starts right at the surface, but I can easily see the deposit going down for many hundreds, if not, 1,000 plus meters of continuation. So, all of a sudden you can start to multiply numbers and come up with crazy numbers. 5, 10 million ounces, sure, that's easily possible in this environment. Okay, now let's step back and look at the entire project. Okay, that is just a 2-kilometer segment out of this
110 kilometer.
Exactly, okay.
Yeah.
And if you look at the results for the exploration work that was done in the South Queensway area, I think was announced maybe late August or early September. I can't remember, but they started to find some very high grades at surface in some trenching, as well as some very encouraging till samples and other results down in that area. So what do I think? I think we're onto a major structural zone, basically a fault in Earth's crust that, and then little faults around it that have the potential to host a district scale gold system here. I think we are onto a discovery that hands down could be a company maker.
That's interesting. When you say company maker, are you talking similar to the size of what you had seen in, I'm trying to remember what the mine was called in Australia that you had mentioned.
At Fosterville, correct.
Yeah, so Fosterville, are you thinking that it could potentially, because the company that you're talking about there, when it listed, obviously it was very exciting. Everyone was wanted to get involved. $1 billion, and eventually came into $10 billion Canadian. Do you think that it's something similar that could potentially be here?
Yeah, very much so. Look, Kirkland Lake, it was an existing company at the time. What they did is they took over Newmarket, I think closed in late 2016. A lot of people actually frowned on that transaction. A lot of people had serious doubts because Fosterville was in the early days. People thought, it's not going to really pan out. There might be a little bit of high grade there, but not much. It was just the opposite. Okay, as soon as Kirkland Lake took over Newmarket, that story developed very quickly because as they did more drilling and aggressive drilling, stepping out ahead of the mine, they could see that the high grade system was very large. Okay, and that mine now generates, I believe, north of 600,000 ounces a year of very high grade gold. That transformed Kirkland from $1 billion to $10 billion. Okay, this discovery here, I would say easily has that scale of potential. I just went through some of the logic behind that,
right?
And it's also very high grade, very similar to what they see at Fosterville. All right, so the grade translates to margin. You can make a lot of money off of very high grade mineralization like this. Okay, so that in my mind, just slam dunk means Newfound is onto a company maker.
Yeah. And did you put up some of the capital to be able to work with Newfound, or is it more of an opportunity where you got equity for your expertise?
Yeah, look, at a personal level, I put some. I bought shares, but I'm also chairman and president of Novo Resources. And back when Newfound was still a private company, this is going back to early March, I believe. We purchased 15 million shares of Newmarket, or sorry, of Newfound.
Newfound, yeah.
Of Newfound. We purchased 15 million shares of Newfound while it was a private company. Now that ended up helping Newfound leverage their IPO process and so forth. So that was a good result for everyone. But yeah, you know what? When I see a good discovery like this, I put my money where my mouth is, and this one I firmly believe that this could be the next Fosterville.
So I guess one of the things I did want to touch on briefly as well is the leadership team. So you mentioned Eric a good bit when you were talking about going over to Australia to look at the Fosterville?
Yes.
Yeah, Fosterville mine. And who is Eric? And I guess a little bit more about the leadership team and what do you think about them to bring something of this potential scale to market and really make it into going from a junior mining company up to, say, a more serious company going forward when it starts to actually produce on a
Actually,
day-to-day basis?
I'm going to talk about two very well-known people in the gold mining space who are both invested in Newfound. Okay, Eric Sprott is certainly one, and in fact, he's the biggest. You know, second to the guys who founded the company, he is the biggest shareholder. But then also Rob McEwen. Rob is very famous in the gold space. He led Gold Corp to becoming one of those success stories of multi-billion-dollar company. This is going back about 20 years ago. Okay, both of these guys are basically the two leaders in the gold space as far as investing in companies like Newfound. Okay, they work at a much more intuitive level and recognize the prospect, the promise of something like this, even though it's an early stage. And they invested early. Okay, so they took part in a placement in Newfound last year, and they remain very big shareholders that they have through the IPO process, and they're certainly going to be an important part of this story going forward. Now, the rest of the team here, you've got Denny Lavalette, who's with Goldspot. He founded Goldspot, which is really a think tank kind of group of a very smart scientific approach group that looks for high quality projects like this. And he and his team pointed Newfound to this opportunity. So, I give a lot of credit to him. Then you have, I'm going to save Colin for last. It's not to mean disrespect. It's just because I want to talk about, kind of build up to that. But look, you have Greg Matheson, who's the project geologist, very meticulous, very systematic explorer, which is good. That's what you want here. And he's really the one that sighted that discovery hole late last year. Okay, so I'll give him full credit there. But then you have the guys in charge of the company too. Okay, so you got Colin Cattell. He runs Palisade, but is also chairman of Newfound. And a young guy, but he's the way I look at Colin is he's kind of your up and coming Eric Sprott, quite frankly. I mean, he has that kind of savvy and market sense. I think he's got a very good career ahead of him. In this case, he went with Denny's guidance to pick up this property, and it paid off. That's a good indication he makes smart decisions. You also have Craig Roberts. Craig, who I've known for, for probably 13 years now. I think he was one of the first people I actually met when I came out of Newmont and went into the junior sector. Very sharp guy. Mainly, he's an engineer, but he's mainly in the finance space, or has been in his career. And he's really got that market sense around how to take a company like this and get the visibility, but also get the credibility behind it. Very, very soft-spoken guy at times, but he's serious as a heart attack. Very smart individual. So look, as a whole, I would say, look, there's some people I haven't discussed, and I don't mean to disrespect anybody, but as a whole, the team is a very solid one, and that goes from the investors who invest in the company to the actual operators within the company.
Yeah, definitely. When I looked at the team with the slide pack that I had received, I did see a lot of folks with plenty of experience in the industry for sure. Plenty of exploration discoveries as well under their belt. So by no means, when I was looking at this, didn't look like that it was anybody's first rodeo. It looked like everybody has plenty of experience and ability to bring this, if it does and looks like it has a lot of potential to fruition and be a huge potential mine for North America. It does seem that you have the right team in place to bring it forward. Yeah. So talking about that and transitioning into that, how with something of this potential scale, I mean, how long could it be producing, and how long would it take to be able to really start producing on a big scale? Because obviously it is a very large amount and a very large space, and you did say Queensway South can be quite remote. Obviously the the prospectivity that you've seen in Queensway North is extremely promising, and that is very close to infrastructure where you can get it to market very easily. But I guess from a full property perspective, at what point do you think it'd be up to maximum scale where you'd actually be plateauing on the amount of gold that you'd be bringing to market?
Okay, well, look, the way to look at this is a district play. Okay, the North Queensway, the discoveries at Keats and Lotto are certainly where things are going to advance quickest, because that's where the focus of much of the current drilling is. It's not to say that's the only promise on the property. There's lots of potential. Okay, I just talked about the potential on the southern extension of the property. But the way this will likely unfold is over the next couple of years, this high grade that's been discovered at Keats and Lotto, and we'll just use that as a general geographic location. This high grade Keats Lotto discovery will be advanced through a resource stage, and then once you define a resource, actually a body of rock in the ground that you can ascribe a grade to and understand, start to understand its economics, you can take it through economic study. Okay, so I'm really giving you a picture in broad terms of how the gold mining industry works. Okay, we would take it through resource stage next 2 years, then we take it through economic study over another year or so after that. You have to also start permitting processes and things like this. Look, people, if anybody thinks you can just start a mine like, snapping your fingers anymore, that doesn't happen. Okay,
you got to get water permits. You got to get everything, man.
There's a lot of permits involved, and rightly so. I mean, there's a lot of environmental factors, social factors that have to be considered.
Sure.
Okay, but you start those once you feel comfortable. You have an economic discovery that's going to advance to a mine. You initiate those types of studies, and then pursue the permits that are required. In the broad brush, I would say it takes about 5 to 7 years for a discovery to become a mine on average in Canada. I think Newfoundland is a particularly good place to build a mine, so maybe we'll be on the shorter end of that spectrum. If the government there is supportive, which I think they are, then I think that's achievable. Okay, now does that mean that that's the end of the story? No, that's really the beginning of the story, because when you put your first mine in and you start getting lots of cash flow, guess what you're going to do? You're going to
delineate it a little bit more.
Exactly. It's one of these self-fulfilling prophecies. You're going to start spending that cash flow on extending the known deposits, but also looking for new ones. And that's where it gets really interesting. Okay, so I think that there's going to be multiple high-grade discoveries like this across the property. And I think, 30 years from now, they will still be mining here, personally. And I think people will look back and realize that this is one of the great, like I said, the biggest gold discoveries in North America in recent time. Okay, this thing, I envision 30 years from now, they'll still be mining here. And this thing could be have generated many millions of ounces at that point and be on its way to many million more.
Interesting. Well, I think that might be a good place to cut it off, unless there's anything else that you think is left to mention. I mean, I think we touched a good bit about not only just the team that you have there and the potential, the rocks there, but we've also covered a good bit about, just the process of exploring and knowing a little bit more about the gold prospecting and junior mining industry as a whole. So is there anything else that you think you wanted to bring up before?
People who are unfamiliar with the gold space have to be aware that gold is cyclical. Okay. You have great times in the mining industry, in the gold mining industry. You have some bearish times. What really counts, though, to make it through all of those times is to have a high quality deposit discovery. Okay, and that's what is here. So if you want to bet money in the gold space, you want to find the highest quality assets or highest quality companies with assets, high quality assets that you can. And this would be a classic example.
Excellent. Well, I appreciate it, Dr. Quinton Hennigh. Very interesting discussion with you, and looking forward to looking more in depth with the company. I'm going to look a lot more in depth with the slide deck that I received, and definitely when I walk through the presentation and the interview, I'll be putting up slides of the property as we kind of discussed with Queensway North, Queensway South. There's definitely a lot of good pictures in there that folks, I'm sure, would love to see, rather than, as much as they love to see our beautiful faces, I'm sure they'd like to see the great prospectivity of Queensway project that we're kind of discussing. And obviously look at the leadership team as well and see some of the credentials that they have. Although you've done a good job explaining, you know, they have the biographies on there as well. So really appreciate your time, and look forward to talking to you in the future as this project continues to develop. I'm sure I'll be touching base with you in the future. So thank you so much. And if you have any last words, feel free. You have the floor.
Thank you, Matt. Take care.
Yep. All right. Thank you. Take care.
All right.